Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into something I'm sure a lot of you have thought about, marriage podcasts.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about the first thing that pops up when you start, we've really gone through articles and lists and reviews and even listened to some snippets to figure out what's really out there.
Yeah, and you wouldn't believe the range. It's incredible. It's almost like there's a marriage podcast for everyone.
Totally. And no matter what you're interested in or where you are in your, relationship, there really is a podcast for you.
Absolutely.
For instance, if you wanted to feel like you were basically a fly on the wall in a couples therapy session, you could check out. Where should we begin? With Esther Perel.
Oh, that's a good one. Perel's really known for helping couples tap into what she calls erotic intelligence, which is all about keeping the spark alive long term.
Yeah, and then on a totally different end of the spectrum, there's this podcast called Is Marriage Worth It?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
And it's hosted by two single anonymous women.
Really?
Yeah.
What an interesting concept.
I know. They're examining marriage from the outside looking in, which is, it's just a totally unique perspective.
I bet it is.
And then there's Naked Folk.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Well, let's just say it's a very open and honest look at relationships and desires and, things most people don't even talk about with their closest friends.
It's like they're pushing boundaries and making people think.
Exactly. And I think that kind of speaks to a bigger trend we're seeing with these podcasts.
Yeah, like what?
There's this real hunger for authenticity, people want to hear real stories, real experiences, even if they're messy or unconventional.
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of why we're doing this deep dive, to guide everyone through all these different options and help people find the podcasts that really connect with them,
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your relationship status is or what your goals are. There's a podcast out there for you.
Mm-hmm. And, even big names like the New York Times and Oprah are talking about these shows now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dateable got featured both. And we met at Acme, which was one of the first dating podcasts. It practically went viral.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can see how much people are craving these kinds of conversations.
For sure. So let's actually jump into some of the specifics here. Like we mentioned, there are a ton of different marriage podcasts out there.
Yeah, so many.
So to make things a little easier, I've kind of broken them down into a few categories.
Okay, good idea.
So you've got podcasts that offer a Christian perspective, like Marriage After God and 247 Marriage Podcasts.
Right.
And then you've got shows like Marriage on the Rocks, which is all about navigating those tough patches that every couple faces at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those focusing on specific communities like Black marriage therapy, which goes beyond just surface level advice and actually delves into systemic issues and cultural nuances that can impact Black couples.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's not just about getting tips. It's about understanding the complexities of relationships within a specific context.
Okay,
So you're ready to dive into some specific shows that really caught our eye.
Let's do it. I'm particularly interested in those that feel like a therapy session in your pocket.
Okay, so let's start with, where should we begin? With Esther Perel.
Okay.
And this is the one that feels like you're eavesdropping on an actual therapy session.
Well, I like that.
And what's brilliant about Perel's approach is that she really focuses on understanding the underlying emotions and desires that are driving our behavior in relationships,
Oh, yeah, she's all about getting to the root of the issue.
Exactly, not just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right, you could walk away from one of those episodes with a totally new perspective on your own relationship patterns.
Absolutely, and if you're looking for something specifically geared towards empowering women in their marriages,
okay,
there's the Marriage Life Coach podcast hosted by Maggie Reyes. She really emphasizes self-awareness and communication, and she actually gives you practical tools to navigate those tricky conversations and advocate for your needs in your relationship.
That's so important.
It is. And, speaking of unique perspectives, Black marriage therapy with Grace Lynn-Smith is doing some really important work.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that one.
Okay, so it's not just generic marriage advice, She tackles those really tough conversations about race and identity and the societal pressures that can impact Black love in ways that a lot of other podcasts just don't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a good reminder that representation matters even when it comes to relationship advice.
Definitely, because it's all about feeling seen and understood.
Exactly, which is crucial for building a strong and healthy partnership.
For sure.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about those podcasts that offer a faith-based perspective on marriage.
Okay, I'm listening.
So we've got Marriage After God, hosted by Aaron and Jennifer Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And they are all about applying biblical principles to modern day relationships.
Yes.
It's very structured, lots of practical advice on things like conflict resolution and keeping the romance alive.
So it's through that Christian lens.
Exactly. And then for a lighter, more humorous take on marriage from a Christian perspective, you've got the 24/7 Marriage Podcast with Javier and Shanann Labrador.
Okay.
Think relatable anecdotes, funny stories, practical tips, and all delivered with a healthy dose of laughter.
Sounds fun.
It's like your fun aunt and uncle giving you marriage advice over brunch.
I love that. Now, let's be honest. Sometimes we need a little help in the bedroom department, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's where a podcast like The Naked Marriage with Dave and Ashley Willis can be really valuable.
Okay, what do they talk about?
Well, what I appreciate about them is that they approach intimacy and sex with a sense of vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah, like they're making you feel like you're not alone.
Exactly. It's like they're normalizing those conversations that a lot of couples are just too afraid to have.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to spice things up, reignite the passion.
Mm-hmm. You could check out the Evolved Marriage Podcast with Kate and Eric McDougall.
Okay.
They're all about giving you strategies to create a more fulfilling and intimate connection, and they do it in a way that feels empowering, not awkward.
Good, because that could easily get awkward.
Oh, totally. And you know what? Sometimes the best relationship advice comes from people who aren't even married themselves.
Really?
Yeah. Are you ready to have your mind blown?
Hit me with it.
Okay, so let's talk about, is marriage worth it?
Okay. The one with the single ladies.
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready.
So they're not afraid to ask the tough questions and challenge those traditional notions of what marriage should be.
So they're really shaking things up.
They are. It's like they're holding up a mirror to the whole institution of marriage and saying like, hey, let's take a good hard look at this, shall we?
I love it.
And sometimes that outside perspective is exactly what you need.
It could be so insightful.
It is. It really forces you to question your assumptions and, consider things from a fresh angle.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally. And speaking of fresh angles, how about a dose of comedic relief?
Ooh, I'm always down for a good laugh.
Have you heard of The Endless Honeymoon?
I have not.
It's hosted by comedian couple Moshe Kasher and Natasha Leggero.
I love them.
Oh, you do?
They're hilarious.
Oh, it's chaos. It's hilarious. And somehow they managed to squeeze in some really solid relationship advice between all the jokes.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
It's like a therapy session meets a stand-up routine.
You never know what's going to happen next.
Exactly. But you can bet you'll be laughing along the way.
I think that's key, finding those moments of joy and connection, even amidst the challenges.
Absolutely, for sure. But before we move on to part 2 of our deep dive, I wanted to just quickly mention a few other popular relationship podcasts that you might find interesting.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because the world of relationship advice is vast.
Yeah.
And we've really only just scratched the surface here.
So true.
So you might want to check out Dateable for navigating the modern dating scene. Or Dear Sugars, hosted by Cheryl Strayed and Steve Almond, which is like getting advice from your wise older siblings.
Oh, I like that.
And then there's Couples Therapy, hosted by comedians Naomi Ekperich and Andy Beckerman, if you like your advice, served with a side of humor.
Okay.
And then for a faith-based perspective, there's Dear Future Wifey, hosted by Lateris R. Whitfield, which explores love, marriage, and personal growth through a lens of faith.
Wow. There really is a podcast for everyone.
There really is.
So how do we choose?
Well, that's what we're here to help you with.
You're right.
So take a moment, think about what you've heard so far.
Yeah.
Which podcasts pique your interest?
Mm-hmm.
What are you hoping to learn or explore?
Good questions.
Because in part 2, we're going to dive even deeper into those specific shows and help you pinpoint the ones that are the perfect fit for your relationship journey.
I can't wait.
Okay, so we've thrown a lot of podcast titles out there, but I think it's time to get a little more personal now.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you said, there's so many options, it can be overwhelming.
Right, so this is your deep dive after all, So
Right.
let's imagine for a second that you're looking for like some serious, insightful guidance, almost like having a therapist in your pocket.
Okay, I like that.
Where should we begin? With Esther Perel might be the perfect fit for you.
Yeah, that one's great. And what's really interesting about Perel's approach is that she doesn't just give advice. She really challenges you to think differently about relationships,
Oh, for sure.
Like she talks about the importance of erotic intelligence, which is all about maintaining desire and connection over the long haul.
And she doesn't shy away from the tough conversations,
Yeah. Yeah.
You're basically listening in on real couples grappling with infidelity loss, communication breakdowns, all the stuff that most people only whisper about.
Yeah, but she does it with such empathy and wisdom, You walk away feeling like you've gained a deeper understanding of not just those couples, but of yourself and your own relationship patterns.
Exactly. Now, what if you're looking for a podcast that specifically addresses the unique challenges faced by BIPOC couples? Right.
Well, Black Marriage Therapy is a must listen.
Okay.
Crystalline Smith, the host, she doesn't just offer generic relationship advice.
Right.
She actually dives into the systemic issues, the cultural nuances, the historical context that can impact Black love in ways that many other podcasts just don't.
Wow. So you're getting a level of depth and understanding that's really hard to find elsewhere.
Exactly. And it's so important to have those voices represented because, let's be honest, the mainstream media often doesn't reflect the full spectrum of experiences when it comes to love and relationships.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for those of you seeking guidance through a faith-based lens, we mentioned Marriage After God and 247 Marriage Podcasts earlier.
Yeah.
And they offer very different approaches, which I think is great.
Right.
With Marriage After God, Aaron and Jennifer Smith, they're very much about applying biblical principles to modern-day relationships.
Okay.
It's a structured approach, lots of practical tips, all rooted in their faith.
Yeah, but if you're looking for something a little more lighthearted, maybe with a bit more humor, the 24/7 Marriage Podcast with Javier and Shanann Labrador might be more your style.
Okay.
They're all about relatable anecdotes, funny stories, and making you feel like you're part of the conversation.
So it's like they're your friends giving you advice over a coffee, but with a Christian perspective woven in.
Exactly. Now let's talk about a topic that often gets brushed under the rug.
Ooh, which one?
Intimacy and sex.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It's one of those things that can make or break a relationship, but so many people are afraid to talk about it openly and honestly.
Absolutely.
And that's where a podcast like The Naked Marriage with Dave and Ashley Willis can be so valuable.
Oh, okay, tell me more.
What I appreciate about them is that they approach intimacy and sex with a sense of vulnerability and authenticity, They're basically saying, it's okay to have these conversations. You're not alone in your struggles.
Yeah, which can be so freeing just to hear that.
Yeah, totally. And they offer practical tips for improving communication and connection in the bedroom.
Right, because that could be a really tough area for a lot of couples.
It can. And if you're specifically looking for ways to, spice things up, reignite that passion. The Evolved Marriage Podcast with Kate and Eric McDougall could be a good one to check out.
Okay.
They're all about helping couples create a more fulfilling and intimate connection.
Yeah.
But they do it in a way that feels empowering, not awkward or clinical.
That's good.
They give you those actionable strategies that you can actually implement in your own relationship.
I like that, sometimes I think the most insightful perspectives come from people who aren't actually married themselves.
Oh, you mean is marriage worth it? With those two single anonymous women?
Exactly.
I knew you were going to say that.
They're dissecting the whole concept of marriage from the outside looking in, asking those tough questions that many people are afraid to ask.
It's almost like they're giving you a reality check, Like, hey, is this really what you want? Have you considered all the angles?
Right, and that can be so valuable, especially if you're on the fence about marriage or just curious about different perspectives.
It's like getting a sneak peek behind the curtain before you decide if you want to join the show.
I love that analogy now. Sometimes you just need a good laugh. Especially when it comes to something as serious as marriage.
Right, you can't take it too seriously all the time. That's where a podcast like The Endless Honeymoon with Moshe Kasher and Natasha Leggero comes in.
Oh yeah, they're hilarious. It's chaos. It's fun.
And somehow they managed to squeeze in some really solid relationship advice between all the jokes.
It's like a therapy session meets a stand-up routine.
Exactly.
Which, yeah, sometimes that's exactly what you need to just take the edge off and remember that it's okay to have fun in your relationship.
For sure, even when things are tough. So we've talked about podcasts that feel like therapy sessions, podcasts that offer a faith-based perspective, podcasts that tackle intimacy, even podcasts that will make you laugh out loud.
That's a lot.
It is. But ultimately, the best podcast for you is the one that speaks to your unique needs and interests.
Totally.
So, what are you hoping to learn or explore in your relationship? Are there any specific challenges you're facing? Any areas where you could use some guidance or a fresh perspective?
Good questions to ask yourself.
Maybe you're looking for practical tips to improve communication, or maybe you're just curious about different relationship styles and approaches.
It's all out there.
It is, whatever it is, there's a podcast out there for you.
I believe that.
But, these podcasts are just tools that can offer valuable information and support.
Right.
But it's up to you to take that knowledge and apply it to your own unique relationship.
Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship advice comes from within.
Exactly. It's about listening to your own intuition, your own heart, and figuring out what works best for you and your partner. So take some time to reflect on what you've heard so far.
Yeah.
Which of these podcasts resonate with you the most?
Right.
What are you most curious to explore?
Good questions.
Because in part 3, we're going to wrap up our deep dive and leave you with some final thoughts and insights that will hopefully inspire you to create the kind of relationship you truly desire.
It's amazing to me as we've gone through all these different marriage podcasts, just how much they reflect the diversity of relationships themselves.
It really is. It's like you're seeing the whole spectrum of human experience, all these different voices and perspectives and ways of approaching love and partnership.
Right. We've got shows for couples who are like looking for deep therapeutic guidance, like Esther Perel's podcast, others that are grounded in faith, like Marriage After God, and even some that tackle those like kind of taboo topics like intimacy and desire with surprising honesty. Yeah, and the best part is that you can find a podcast that meets you exactly where you are in your journey.
Totally.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're newly dating or happily married or going through a rough patch or even questioning if marriage is right for you at all.
It's true. It's like having this personalized library of relationship advice just right at your fingertips.
And available 24/7, which is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that accessibility is a game changer,
Oh, for sure.
You don't need a therapist's couch or an expensive self-help guru.
Right.
All you need are your earbuds and an open mind.
It's like having a virtual couples counselor you can take with you anywhere.
And you're not just limited to one voice either,
Right.
You can listen to therapists like Esther Perel and Maggie Reyes who bring their professional expertise to the table. But you can also hear from real couples sharing their own stories and experiences, which I think can be incredibly relatable and validating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Shows like Committed in Marriage Be Hard Conversations do a great job of showcasing those like raw, honest conversations that happen behind closed doors.
Totally.
It's a good reminder that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we're all figuring this thing out together.
And let's not forget the power of laughter, too.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes a little comedic relief is exactly what you need to just lighten the mood and remember not to take things too seriously.
For sure, podcasts like The Endless Honeymoon and Couples Therapy do a brilliant job of blending humor with insightful advice.
It's like they're saying, hey, marriage can be tough, but it can also be hilarious and fun.
Right.
Don't forget to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, exactly. And, sometimes just hearing other couples laugh about their relatable experiences can be so freeing and empowering.
No, for sure.
It's like, oh, it's not just me.
Right.
We all have those silly little arguments or those moments of utter chaos.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of marriage podcasts, what are like your biggest takeaways? What's resonated with you the most?
For me, it's the incredible variety and accessibility of these shows. Like, there's truly something for everyone, regardless of your relationship status or your background or your beliefs.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing how these podcasts can foster connection and understanding, not just within couples, but also among listeners who are sharing similar experiences.
It's like a virtual community of support and growth, all centered around this universal desire for love and connection.
That's beautiful. So if you're feeling curious or maybe in need of a little relationship boost, I definitely encourage you to explore the world of marriage podcasts.
Yeah, you might be surprised by what you discover and the insights you gain and the connections you forge along the way.
And remember, as you listen to these podcasts, keep an open heart and a curious mind, and let the conversations inspire you to communicate more openly, connect more deeply, and create the kind of relationship you truly desire.
Because the journey of love and marriage is a lifelong adventure. We're all in this together.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of marriage podcasts.
Of course, this was fun.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.